livestream.org live stream for August 30th, 2023. Oh my goodness gracious. Where did August go? Welcome. If you're new to the group, we're very glad you're here. Tell everyone you know about this group, studentloanjustice.org, studentloanjustice.org. We are the first, the oldest, the largest, and the only true grassroots group fighting only and absolutely for student loan borrowers. We don't do deals with bad guys. We don't have any hidden agendas. We're just normal people, distressed student loan borrowers by and large, fighting for two simple things. Number one, the return of bankruptcy rights to student loans. It lies at the core of everything. Nobody wants to file for bankruptcy, least of all us. But we have got to get this leverage returned to us in order to get anything meaningful and good to happen for all student loan borrowers. Second thing we're fighting for is student loan cancellation. The President and Secretary of Education have all the power needed to cancel any amount of federally owned student loan debt by executive order, administratively, needing no money from the Treasury, adding nothing to the national debt. Should have happened a long time ago, quite frankly. So we're fighting for that. This group started that whole thing, by the way. We wouldn't be talking about Joe Biden's lame student loan cancellation gimmick that got defeated by the Supreme Court recently. As stupid as that whole thing was, it would not have ever happened but for this group and the people on this group who fought so hard in the many months before anybody was talking about canceling student loans by executive order, to get our petition up to the 1.2 or so million signatures that it has now, change.org/cancel student loans. That all started here on this group, guys. But that first thing, bankruptcy, is by far and away the most important thing. If we could pick between Joe Biden's student loan cancellation and getting bankruptcy rights returned to federal to all student loans, actually, we would pick the second thing. We would pick returning bankruptcy way ahead of Joe Biden's lame, feckless, probably designed to fail student loan cancellation gimmick. And hopefully that will become clear to you as you think about this issue and you read about this issue going forward. If you're new to the group, maybe for now, I'll just ask you to just take my word for it. But you'll hear me say it again and again every night on these live streams. So a couple of announcements. We should be seeing what will hopefully be a pretty good national newspaper interview with a bunch of our members coming out soon. I would think probably this week. We also are encouraging everyone to get us into a meeting with your House rep, your member of the House of Representatives. So look at the thing scrolling below me. Get us into a meeting with the judiciary staffer of your House rep. Give them our contact info. Say that you want us to come in on the meeting. We will do most or all of the talking if we have to. We're trying to make it very easy for you. But you've got to set that up because you're a constituent. So we're busting our ass on this side, guys. We're working very, very, very hard, and we're willing to work much, much, even more hard. We will meet with 435 members of the House of Representatives if it kills us, and we will do most or all of the talking if we have to. But it starts with you. You've got to make that happen. So please take that seriously. Last announcement. We need donations, right? Oh, sorry. Next to last announcement. Please donate, guys. It's getting a little serious here on this end. We need 21 people, I think, to donate $20 or more this week. You can see the donation link there, studentloanjustice.org/donate. Just please help so I can shut up about it, because if you've been with our group for any length of time, you'll know that I suck at fundraising, and it's always a big bastard for us to raise the relative nickels and dimes that we have to raise to keep this group functioning, keep this group fighting and winning this battle. So last announcement, and I'm really reluctant to even talk about this, but the Department of Education and their negotiated rulemaking session thing are doing a new thing. They are forming a student debt relief committee, I believe, and they are accepting nominations for people to be on that committee. And, you know, we've participated in these negotiated rulemaking sessions for decades now. We've become more and more outraged as this problem has gotten far and far worse, and seeing the old guard, all these fakes, essentially push and fight for the status quo in these negotiated rulemaking sessions, going back to 2007. And look what's happened since 2007. I don't need to tell you that this lending system has metastasized. It's exploded. It's gone over the cliff. The federal student loan program, in my humble opinion, and by most all rational metrics, is one huge catastrophic failure at this point. However, having said that, it may actually be worthwhile for us to participate to be selected for this student debt relief committee. And so, and I really have to think about it a bit more. I've got to really read the bulletin that was posted in the Federal Register a few more times and think about things. But I think it probably would be a good move for us to at least nominate at least one or maybe a couple people to do this. So I threw my hat in the ring. The focus of this debt relief committee is to look at the secretary, aka the president's power, vis-a-vis section 1082, 20 U.S. Code section 1082, the presidential power to cancel student loans essentially by executive order. So all the stuff that we're talking about with loan cancellation by executive order, it's all about that. I don't want to say too much publicly about this whole thing, really, period, except maybe even just beyond what I've said. So, I think it may be helpful if we get more than one person nominating us. So I've thrown my hat in the ring. I think Ed McKinley also volunteered to step up as an alternate. I've heard Jackie Abron say some things, but either I or Lisa or somebody will post the bulletin to the Federal Register in the comments below this live stream. So you can read it for yourself, and I'd be very happy to hear your own comments on it. I've got my own thoughts, but I don't want to splay them out here tonight for public consumption. But have a look, and if you want to nominate me or I guess Ed, maybe even Jackie Abron, and Jackie, if you're watching this, maybe you could post a little more about yourself and et cetera, in the comments, and read the bulletin for yourself and so on and so forth. I don't know exactly how the selection process goes, but it's probably at least worthwhile to see, even if they would select us, and that in itself is an open question. It will be a true test to see if there's anyone that still has any integrity at the Department of Education. But anyways, I've said too much already, so I'm just going to leave it at that. But yeah, look at the comments below this and decide for yourself. And by the way, if you have any questions or comments and you're watching us live on Twitter and or Facebook, by all means, feel free to throw your thoughts out, your questions, comments, editorial opinions, or otherwise, live if you're watching us, as I said, Facebook or Twitter. And if I can see them, I will very happily read your comments aloud on air and respond to them as is appropriate. So tonight, I want to talk about some fun comparisons that we can make just to put the horribleness of the federal student loan program in perspective. There's some pretty jaw-dropping comparisons that can be made that I think will bring this into sharp relief. Just how galactically dangerous and failed the federal student loan program is. So Let's go back 75 or 80 years, shall we? And let's look at the thing that won us World War II, right? The Manhattan Project, the development of the atomic bomb. Pretty much the most incredible thing that this country has ever pulled off technologically, in my humble opinion. So this Manhattan Project started, I think, in 1940 or so, 1939. It employed 130,000 people at locations across the country, from Los Alamos to my home state of Washington State, and many other places. Tennessee, I believe, Oak Ridge, Tennessee. 130,000 people did it employ. It was one of the largest, most super expensive secret thing that this country has ever done. And the cost of the Manhattan Project, the total cost was $2 billion. And that's in 1940, 41, 42, $43, $44. In today's dollars, it was $24 billion. 24 billion. So, 130,000 people employed. We know the ramifications of the whole thing. A huge deal. I think all would agree. Probably the largest thing that this country has ever done. It's $24 billion. So in an average year, over $100 billion. And then we're talking about 2023 dollars, by the way, for the Manhattan Project, $24 billion in 2023 dollars. Every year, over $100 billion in interest alone is created out of thin air on the federal student loan portfolio in interest. And it is slapped onto the backs of us, the borrowers. No jobs are created by slapping this interest on us. It certainly doesn't win us any world wars. All it does is gets stuck onto our backs, and we're expected to pay it back to the Department of Education and the Treasury, and the black box that is the U.S. Treasury and the federal government in Washington, D.C. Think about that, guys. And we're not even talking about the principal amount. We're not talking about the $100 billion a year that funds the colleges and the $100 billion a year that is lent to us. We're only talking about interest, ladies and gentlemen. Isn't that astounding? So that's one pretty stark example. I just thought of that one today, actually. But there's some other ones that are more down to earth. So let's look at the state of South Carolina. No, let's look at the state of Georgia first. There is enough student loan debt in the state of Georgia, $81 billion, to purchase every farm in the state of Georgia. Every acre of farmland in the state of Georgia you could purchase with the student loan debt that hangs around the necks of the people of Georgia. Every peach plantation, every cotton, every tobacco field, every single acre of farmland in Georgia. And you'd still have $20 billion left over. Think about that. And by the way, the entire state budget of South Carolina, which is a huge number, I'm talking about the big budget, state budget, which includes all the federal pass-through spending, that's only $68 billion. So, no, sorry. $48 billion. So we're talking about 169% of the entire big state budget of the state of Georgia. 169% of that, 1.6 times, 7 times of that is hanging around the necks of the people of Georgia in mostly federal student loan debt. Every farm you could buy still have $20 billion left over with all the student loan debt in Georgia. Let's look at South Carolina. South Carolina is even worse. I'm not going to bore with the numbers. I will just tell you. With all the student loan debt hanging around the necks of the people of South Carolina, you could buy every farm, every acre of farmland in that state, and South Carolina is a huge agricultural state, tobacco, cotton, probably corn, soybean, everything else. You can buy every acre of farm in South Carolina twice and still have a few $billions left over, twice, with the student loan debt, mostly federal student loan debt, hanging around the necks of the people of South Carolina. That's true. Let's go further south. Let's look at Florida. $120 billion in mostly federal student loan debt hanging around the necks of the people of Florida. Interest on that is something like $8 billion a year. Again, created out of thin air, from nothing, from the ether. Created out of thin air, slapped onto the backs of the people of Florida, and ultimately sucked out of them and sent to the books of the Department of Education and the U.S. Treasury. $8 billion in interest a year. You know, the entire annual revenue of Disney World, which is by far and away the largest employer in Florida, the entire annual revenue of Disney World is slightly more than $5 billion. So the interest alone that is being sucked out of the people of Florida is essentially the same as Disney World disappearing every year or something like that. You get my point. How fucking outrageous is that? I'm sorry. I don't mean to hit you over the head with preachings and stuff like that, but I just have to say that's just disgusting. And Ron DeSantis, he called for the return of bankruptcy to student loans, to his credit. But, as governor, he should be calling for student loan cancellation because his state, Florida, is sinking under the weight of this predatory big government, Florida wrecking unconstitutional debt. There's nothing that any conservative, any true conservative, should be saying or doing to support this lending monstrosity. I'm trying to think of one for Texas. Maybe you can help me there. So the people of Texas owe 141, more than Florida, $141 billion hanging around the necks of the people of Texas in mostly federal student loan debt. I haven't come up with anything good yet for Texas. I haven't looked really hard. Maybe if you're from Texas, maybe you can think of something. But I'm sure $141 billion would pretty much buy something huge that you could reference in Texas. Like, I don't know, maybe like every football team, every professional sports franchise in the state of Texas, probably times about like 5 or 10 you could buy with just the student loan debt that's hanging around the necks of the people of Texas. I'd love to think of a good example for California too. $147 billion is the mostly federal student loan debt hanging around the people of the state of California, and on and on and on. And if you want to know what the statistics are for your state, let me know and I can tell you. So I am looking for your question, comment now. I may or may not be able to see them. Yeah, I don't know, guys. I don't know that I'm going to be able to see them tonight. I'm looking on Twitter. I don't know, guys, but let's think of some other very fun comparisons that we can compare the student loan galactically failed monstrosity to. $1.6 trillion in federal student loan debt, another probably $200 billion in private student loan debt, interest of about something like $108 billion a year being sucked out of the country. Oh, and here's my very final point to put that all in perspective. We're talking about all the interest that accrues, $108 billion a year on the federal student loan program. When the federal student loan program was created through the Higher Education Act in 1965, and when President Lyndon Baines Johnson signed this Higher Education Act into law, he said, and I'm quoting him almost exactly, "We can give student loans free of interest to capable, deserving, and ambitious students," something like that. I'm paraphrasing. Free of interest, he said. Free of interest is what Lyndon Baines Johnson, who signed the creation of the federal student loan program into existence. Free of interest, he said. How far have we fallen from those ideals? $100 billion a year in interest. And think about it, guys. This interest is starting again this week. In fact, in a couple of days, day after tomorrow. What's that? Friday, interest begins clicking off on our asses again. Now, the good news, or maybe it's bad news, but whatever it is, I'll let you decide. It is the truth. The truth is that before this pandemic, 59%, nearly 60%. So 3 in 5, most student loan borrowers, 3 in 5 student loan borrowers were not paying on their student loans. It's true. Before the pandemic, nearly 3 in 5 student loan borrowers were not paying on their student loans. And even if you account for people who are in school and maybe on their grace period or whatever, it's still well over half of student loan borrowers were not paying on their student loans before the pandemic. When they'd start demanding repayments again, October 1st, a month from Friday, my best estimate is that maybe 25%, maybe 1 in 4 borrowers will resume paying. And within about 6 months from then, so I'm going to say by this Christmas, I think that's going to go down, guys, to like 15 or 20%, maybe even less. I don't know. So if you're freaking out right now about student loan repayments being turned back on, I can only tell you that if you ever do pay again on your federal student loans, you will be in the very small minority of all borrowers. We're not calling for a debt strike or any of that nonsense. That's not what this is. It's not a strike. It's the people giving up on this lending monstrosity. It's the people being done. It's essentially the end of the federal student loan program. I mean, call it whatever you want. When 4 in 5 people in a lending program are not repaying on the loans, what is that? You can call it whatever you want, but it is what it is. So we need to fight, guys, because this could have a nice ending. This could have a very, very disastrous ending. The clean, the clean civil ending to this story begins with us getting the leverage of bankruptcy back. When that happens, they're pretty much going to have to cancel loans broadly, meaningfully, deeply, maybe even totally. They're going to have to run these income-driven repayment plans with a modicum of good faith so that most people make it through, rather than the overwhelming majority, 90+%, being disqualified out of the programs because the Department of Education hates canceling loans. With the leverage of bankruptcy back on our side, all sorts of good things will happen. But I'm here to tell you guys, when they turn these loans back on October 1st, the student debt collection industry is drooling at the prospect of us being served up to them like turkeys at the Thanksgiving dinner, in the words of Elizabeth Warren, who quite frankly has been a huge disappointment for student loan borrowers, certainly over the past 8-10 years that she's been in the Senate, and very much disappointing last session as she very loudly remained silent on key legislation that would have returned bankruptcy rights to student loans. But those are her words, and I'm here to tell you guys, it is going to get very, very ugly for us when they turn these loans back on, and we are served up on a platter to the student debt collection industry. And anybody who telling you that no, bankruptcy, no, we don't want bankruptcy. Bankruptcy is a terrible thing to have to do. Don't believe them. They are fighting for the other side. They're probably fighting for the debt collection industry, quite frankly. The founding fathers knew that having the leverage of bankruptcy was so important. They called for uniform bankruptcy laws in the Constitution ahead of the power to raise an army and declare war. Now, few people, maybe even no one, will actually have to file when we get the right of bankruptcy returned. No. That's not what is important. What is important is that we get the leverage of bankruptcy, as the founding fathers called for in the Constitution, ahead of the power to raise an army and declare war, ahead of the power to, ahead of the right to bear arms, ahead of the freedom to assemble, the right to free speech, ahead of the abolition of slavery, ahead of every right enumerated in the Bill of Rights. Very good reason for that. So whether you would ever or never file for bankruptcy is not important. All of us, everyone, absolutely every single person with student loans needs to be fighting for the return of bankruptcy protections to these loans. So, okay, guys, I'm going to leave it at that. I do apologize if I was unable to see your comments tonight. You know, Facebook, it can be a very difficult thing. But I will respond to any questions, comments, editorial opinions, or otherwise that you may have in the comments after the fact. We're pretty good about that. Maybe the last thing that I'll say is, guys, if you're feeling freaked out right now, you're not alone. 98% of everybody is not getting the loan cancellation that is being trotted out in the media right now. And all the loan cancellation in the world that Biden has already done is a drop in the bucket. It does not solve the problem. It only ensures the perpetuation of this loan scam. And it only ensures that this problem will get much worse, much more quickly going forward. So you are not alone. In fact, 85% of all student loan borrowers, more than 4 out of 5, were underwater on their student loan debt even before they turned the payments off. So now is the time for you to maybe feel some pride in yourself and fight for yourself. Don't be hypnotized by any of the other groups that don't ask you to do anything real, that aren't fighting for bankruptcy, by the way, which is, as I said, the key to everything. Think about it. Help us fight. At a minimum, you will do our daily actions. So we ask everyone to do our daily actions on a almost daily basis, not 7 days a week, but probably four times a week. Get into the habit of doing our daily actions every day. They're quick. They're simple. I think they're fun. They're educational. You'll learn a lot from doing them. And they really do help. You know, we've got 1.4 million people in this group, at least on paper. And can you imagine how strong we'll be when even 10% of those people are doing our daily actions? It's the key to everything if you actually want to solve this problem. Not pretend solved, not Joe Biden $10,000 loan cancellation nonsense solved, or many other bullshit, nonsense, disgusting, stupid things that we've seen the Department of Education and Washington, D.C. Foist upon us in years and decades past. If you actually want to see this problem actually solved, you'll do our daily actions. And that's the most important action thing that I can possibly say tonight. So take heed, hang in there, fight with us. It's cathartic. It feels very good to fight this fight. We do nothing more than tell the truth. We need you. The country needs you. And much rides on this that goes well beyond student loans, guys. John Adams once said that the way to conquer and enslave a country is, yeah, by the sword, surely, but by debt, he said, by debt. And if they can do to other loans what they've done to student loans, they will. And that does not bode well for this country, ladies and gentlemen. That's a very slippery, dark, dark slope. We don't want to go there. So you need to fight for yourself, for the 43 million other people, 38 million of whom were never going to be able to pay their loans before the pandemic. And hundreds of millions of people are going to follow in our footsteps, and the entire freaking country from whom they could remove bankruptcy rights if we allow this student loan precedent to stand. We cannot let this injustice stand, guys. So think about that. Do our daily actions. Please donate. Last thing I'll say. I'll see you guys tomorrow. Good luck. God bless. And Godspeed, everyone.